Hey, thanks for tuning in. This is episode 35 of the Rich Soni podcast, a Cerasonic original production. Today we're featuring a conversation I recently had with songwriters Harrison Bieth and Ziggy Grover. Ziggy, this is the first time he's joined us on the show, so he's a new name to those who don't know him. Harrison has been on the show several times before, I think more than anyone at this point. So frequent listeners of the show may be familiar with him, but if you're not and you enjoy this conversation, definitely check out the show notes where I link back to previous episodes. More about that in a minute, though. This one's kind of special. There's a couple special little things that I'm doing. Because the primary topic discussed was the 2023 compilation that Harrison put together. It's called Songs to Add Light to Dark. And both Ziggy and myself contributed songs to this compilation. So did some other folks that have come up on the show or have actually been guests previously. And this compilation's really cool. It's a great idea that Harrison had. He briefly talked about it on the last episode he was on right toward the end. He put it together, and the proceeds are being donated by him to the Trevor Project, which is the leading suicide prevention and crisis intervention nonprofit for LGBTQ young people. So if you're interested in supporting that, head over, again, check the show notes and head over to the link to the Bandcamp and purchase the album. You can pay the $5, I think he said it is. I can't remember, but you can pay the minimum, or you could just donate whatever you want toward the charity as well. 3 of the songs on the compilation have actually been discussed on previous episodes of this podcast, and I'm going to feature those segments at the end of this podcast. One of those is The Silver Clouds by Harrison, which was discussed on episode 23. And then there's Shatter the Glass by Andrew Miles, which was discussed on episode 24, and Everything Hurts by Meadowwood Lane, which was discussed by its author and the singer of that band, Meadowwood Lane, Jim Blass, on episode 30. I'm going to link, just like the compilation, I'll link to all of those previous episodes in the show notes. But as I said, I'm also going to splice these segments in at the end of the show, so you'll be able to listen to those folks talk about their songs. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, be sure to follow us here and also on Instagram at Rich Soni Podcast. We feature exclusive reels on that page that are really cool. They're little, they're not too short. They're medium length, about 2-minute little clips that I like to post on there. And we've been resharing content from previous guests as well. Shows, album releases, if they're not a musician, if they were posting something cool, I'll reshare it. So be sure to follow us there too. And if you want to support this podcast, go to shop.cerasonic.com, again, linked in the show notes, to purchase merchandise. We just put up a whole bunch of new, really amazing stickers. I designed these things myself, and I'm really proud of them. So definitely check them out. I might bundle them into packs. In the future, I also might do like a sticker of the month club or something like that, but I think right now I'm just going to post all of them and put them all up for sale, so definitely check those out. And if you want to just donate money to support this podcast, we're doing it for free, but there's still some costs that need to be covered. You could just tip us on Venmo. Our name is @Cerasonic, which will also be in the show notes, so definitely check those out. Now let's dive in by listening to the song that I contributed to this compilation. I wrote, recorded, mixed, and mastered it, as I do with all of my music typically. This one was done specifically for this compilation, though, so it's sonically inspired by maybe things that are different than some of the stuff I've put out before. I was thinking about Iggy Pop's album, The Idiot. I listened to that a lot during the creation of this song. Of course, there's the mythology. I don't know if it's a fact or mythology that Ian Curtis, the singer of Joy Division, had committed suicide while this record was playing. So there's some darkness to it. But there's also some other mental health aspects just in Iggy Pop's own life. And David Bowie, there's the whole story behind that, which is worth looking into. I won't get into it now. Was also a little inspired sonically by the Strokes, guided by voices, the Misfits, these DUI indie and punk song like musicians. Since the compilation is a DUI compilation, I wanted my song to have a similar kind of grit to it. And some of that inspiration pours over into the lyrics as well, but there's a mix of other stuff in there. Of course, the topic is mental health, but there's some imagery, etc., that's pulled from my more classic places that I pull imagery from. So that's for you to figure out and for me to dive into at a later time, though. Today, I want to really mostly focus on the compilation. So let's dive in. I'll play the song, and then I'll cut over to the conversation with Harrison and Ziggy. All right, welcome to another episode of the Rich Soni podcast. We're rolling with Harrison Bieth and Ziggy Grover. Welcome. What's up, Ziggy? You saw my text earlier. Do you remember that time we met, by the way?
Yes, I do remember, and I think yeah, like I think it was back in like 2017
Had to
because I
be.
think I was yeah because I think I was studying at William Patterson like at the time, and I just heard about this from Scott Jung.
Wait, hold on. I don't mean to interrupt. When was I? When were you going to tell me that you went to William Patterson? Because I'm just learning that for the first time.
It was well yeah, it was like 2016. I think like I was going for my master's.
Oh, okay. We wouldn't have crossed paths then. Okay, because I'm a William Patterson alumni, so like I like learning about who went to school there.
I think we basically just were at open mics.
Yeah.
I didn't really talk.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
we,
didn't
we
really
didn't
talk
really
about it.
become friends until like much later. But
Oh yeah,
so
for
like
sure.
I would have never even speculated that that's where you went to school. Because like, anyways, just like knowing people from William Patterson who are alumni.
That makes sense too, because it was at the Fine Grind in Wayne, which was only open for
Yeah,
like a year or something. And that wasn't a rough open mic night to host, just because it was like a brand new place that opened. The staff didn't really like understand what was going on with they usually didn't even know that it was open mic night when I got there, and there'd be like two people that came, and then yeah.
Also, the location of that open mic was just not really convenient because it's not the other one is in a better location, but it's closer to the mall. It's in a more confined space. With that open mic, there's the pizzeria, there's Outback Steakhouse. It's just smack dab in the middle of Hamburg Turnpike and all that in Berdan, and it wasn't really meant to have an open mic space.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, I think opening any music thing at a plaza that isn't like buying or selling stuff, I think it's like I think it was like anytime I go in there, I felt like it was sort of a curse because I worked at like this music teaching place in Gillette, and it was a middle in the middle of like this kind of one of those similar malls, and I think I think when I got let go of it, then the pandemic happened, and I think it's closed. I have to check again because I don't think they have a spot there anymore.
Yeah, it's a rough location to have in a strip mall for sure.
I don't even know
I
what's there
agree.
what that took it over. I haven't even been to that part of Wayne in a very long time.
Yeah.
It was a nice room though. I did like the location.
It did. The room itself was actually nice. I will say that. And
It
I remember
was.
when,
They had the fireplace in
yeah,
there.
Yeah,
when they did
yeah.
when they did the songwriter circle, which I know you started with Andrew and Scott. That was a nice space to do that. Not that the Little Falls place wasn't, but it felt like it had the stage set up to do something or host an event like that. And I only did it maybe once or twice. But I remember that the space for that open mic or that songwriter circle was actually really nice and open.
It was. It definitely was.
Yeah, I liked it a lot for that reason. That's why I kept hosting it as long as I did, which was like a year. They had no PA either, which I almost
That
kind of
was a
liked
problem,
because I
yeah.
could bring my own system, which is like way better than the ones they usually have. So I liked that too, but yeah, I don't know. It was fun. I got to meet Ziggy there briefly, and there weren't many. Sometimes it'd be only me playing, or one or two other people that would come. But yeah, it was cool.
That
Back in
sounds like when I hosted the
2017.
Little Falls location too.
Yeah, exactly. It goes like that sometimes. The Little Falls one has been doing really well. I mean, I still watch it. I can't make it out really too much anymore. Soon, I hope to. But it seems like it's pretty busy.
I mean, that's all Andrew and Rob.
Yeah, Andrew
They
and Rob,
took
man.
what was the RCC open mic, which can't run because of staffing issues and the fact that they can't keep the shop open past 7:30, and moved it to Little Falls, which also lost its open mic because of the pandemic, and so like the two worlds basically just combined.
I think what's great too is that we were able to build a community out of that in a way that like it kind of felt like Ridgewood Ridgewood would only kind of have that for a little bit, but I think when we got to like the fine grind of Little Falls, I think that's when I think we started to connect a little. Harrison and I and many others like connected a little more.
Also, to that point, we never stopped open mic. We always did it virtually throughout the pandemic, which was actually an idea that was started by Cedar Beans, and then they stopped doing it because they just couldn't keep doing it for whatever reason. But then Andrew just was like, no, no, no. We're as long as we're around on a Monday night, we're gonna do this open mic and keep the community alive in some way, shape, or form. So throughout that year and a half where we were not able to go anywhere, we at least had that for a time until we figured out what the next move was. And then the fine grind came knocking and everything kind of fell into place after that.
Hmm.
Has that become your all's home base as of recently, or would you say Cedar Beans is more of
It's both.
sort of the home? It's both.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say like it's tough because the communities are very similar, so they kind of feel like they're two in the same.
Yeah.
But there are the regulars who just go to Cedar Beans. There are the regulars who go to Fine Grind, and then there's the people who go to both.
What
Mhm.
about Booton, by the way, Harrison? I saw, man, I was so pissed. My kids got sick last week or 2 weeks ago, and I saw that you were playing at BCC
So I
too.
haven't been to the open mic yet because it's such a schlep for me. But and it's every other week. So like me going out there just for an every other week open mic is kind of tough. But that space is so nice to play on. They have a
Yeah,
really good stage. The Boot and Coffee Company is actually in a different location. It's still on Main Street, but they moved further up the street, kind of across from where Boon Tunes used to be. And they really did a great job remodeling and
it's
getting the
ridiculous,
space that
right?
it really deserved. Because back then, it was good for open mic, but it wasn't. It was, I don't know if you remember, because you had the counter and then you had that back room. Now you have like a whole lounge, and then you have that whole separate side just for performing, and it's really well designed. And they actually have a green room, which is really nice. No,
It
Really?
is really good.
no other places that I've ever played at
Wow,
have a green room. So
that's
having
cool.
that space just to kind of chill and hang out and get snacks and all that jazz was really cool. I would 1,000% play there again.
It's only like 10 minutes from me, Like that is very much by close to me. So I should be going there. That's probably going to be my home open mic night after, not after. Once I start to go out a little bit more.
Yeah, one of these days I want to trek up to that open mic, but Cedar Beans is so much closer to me than Boudin is by like 10 minutes. So it just, that for me makes more sense. But I do want to see, because I do know a lot of the people who go to that open mic. Like I'm friends with a lot of people who attend that. And I also do the songwriters circle that's also at the Sanctuary, which is another art space on Main Street, which is relatively new. So I'm in that community, and I've been. I feel like that's like a second home to me in a way, because I've just spent so much time there in the music scene, just going to shows in Boudin, not necessarily playing. I've only played there a handful of times, but I've met so many people over the years at Boon Tunes, and I've built up this network of people that every once in a while will run into, and it's been like a second home to me. And there's just a really good group of people.
What about you, Ziggy? What tends to be your home?
Yeah, obviously, Fine Grind and Cedar Beans have been where I would go and play, and uh, a lot of my close friends are usually there most of the time.
Maybe it's good to do this, right? Because we haven't talked since 2017, really. But even before we dive into, I know we're here, we have a main event, right, to talk about the songs to add light to dark, right? We'll get to that for sure. But maybe we should start with that. Why don't you fill me in and the listeners into what was your journey since then,
Yeah.
right? So take us back to 2017 and walk us through it.
Well, I think the weird thing about me is that I am in a position where, I'm not concerned about when I'm going to drop an album or when I'm going to perform. So anytime I want to book, anytime I'm like, I'll book a show. It doesn't usually happen, but when I do, I try to make the best out of it, because I think, one, I have a lot of stuff that I want to sing and bring out, and two, it's because like whenever I put up something, I just kind of do it because I feel like it. And I think going to Cedar and the Fine Grind, and playing out and just playing some of the songs from my collection, like even going back to years ago, like that's maybe some people may remember, some people may hear it for the first time, and I think that's great. No matter what, I'm always active, going to shows, and more recently, I think starting around like 2022, or I guess when I started following Andrew and the Valentines, which Harrison is in now, I started filming a lot of bands. I think one of the coolest things is that like I've been very interested in filming concerts. It's a great way to kind of like connect with the scene, and also documenting and putting it together. I love doing that.
I get what you're saying, right? Like once you add this layer of documenting what's going on, it actually amplifies the legitimacy, quote unquote, of what's happening through the lens of what someone's doing. So yeah, I get that totally. Um, yeah, go ahead.
I want to just add a real point to that, because 2022 was the year of Jimmy's, because there weren't a whole lot of places booking shows still, and Johnny Knollwood, who was pretty much the first person to start booking shows after the pandemic, he had a bunch of different venues, but ultimately 2022 was the year of Jimmy's. It was just this. I know it's been probably mentioned on this podcast before. Sleazy little bar in Kearney, New Jersey, near a whole bunch of nothing in a park. And but that was our spot. And so Ziggy would more times than not run sound because Johnny just had a million different responsibilities and a lot of times just wasn't at the shows because of just the number of commitments that he had during that phase of his life. So oftentimes Ziggy would be running sound. Whether or not he was performing that night was another thing entirely, because that also was the case a number of times. But that's kind of the one thing that's been really missing, is that no one films anything. There's no bootlegs of Jersey artists, local Jersey artists. There's no live recordings of anything. I mean, like I said, Johnny Knoll was really the only one that does it, and that's only if you ask him, and that's not a guarantee. Like I have a live set from one of my solo sets that I did at Jimmy's. I have the whole audio. Not a lot of people are doing that. It seems that's a very thing that's lacking, is not enough people are doing this. And I think there's a lot of problems with like ASCAP, and I get all that, but it's still a fun thing to do.
Yeah,
ASCAP isn't stopping you from recording it either. You know, like they might stop you from publishing it, but whatever. We can get
But
into
I think
that
people just don't,
another
there's
time.
that disconnect, and people are just kind of afraid because of everything that happens. But
No, it's important though, right? Like uh Grateful Dead, right? Like the Deadheads really pull a lot from that. They're a band that didn't have that much major label push in their whole career, and one of the things that really drove them was the community support and the community recording and adding that legitimacy.
yeah,
that's where that family came, was from all the live shows that they played, because they were really the first band to not have to record a whole bunch of music, but just play a bunch of shows, and that being the core of where their fans come from, was just their live set. That was a completely new concept at the time. So they really broke ground by being the first band just to build a community that way.
yeah, absolutely. Again, like Grateful Dead has been kind of like the one have been following a lot of that. Now, since I'm in sort of this Grateful Dead like collective, I use it loosely because we shaved off a couple members.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair, accurate representation of what that is.
You're talking about the Fox thing?
Yes, the Midnight Fox project.
Yeah. Give a spiel about that.
Okay, yeah. So Midnight Fox project.
The Frank Fox.
Yeah, it was started by it was started by Frank, and I think it was mostly people who were into this sort of like let's play whatever we want, that type of mentality. Obviously, that attracted a lot of people, and including myself. But now I think it's gotten to a point where we have like the right amount of members, and their contributions are just as important. And obviously, Frank is a character. I want to
Yeah, I
say.
met him once. I only met him once, but you could gather that. He's a cool dude, but definitely a character.
Yeah, and I think being a part of that collective is a lot of fun because the experience is a lot different than what I'm used to, and I think it's the fact that there is not a lot of judgment.
In what way? Like I'm very intrigued by this collective, right? I haven't come and seen you all obviously because of my time constraints, etc. But I've seen a few posts online, and it seems cool. Exactly like what you said. It has kind of a Grateful Dead-y kind of allure to it, but elaborate because I haven't come and seen you all. How does it work?
The way I can describe it is it's pretty much the Grateful Dead. I sing lead on 2 songs. Frank has a lot of songs and a lot of covers that he brings, and this other guy, Jason, also has a lot of covers that he's. We find a way, and that's pretty much our set list. And I think one of the best parts is that we have a good like working relationship, but also we're friends.
Sure, and that's a key element from the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, and I think that's something I don't think I ever got from previous experiences, which is why I love doing this.
Everything that Ziggy said about Midnight Fox is exactly how I feel about the Valentines. It's a lot of the same energy because, like the Midnight Fox project, everyone's comprised of members who are solo artists in their own right. Like Ziggy can break off and do his own thing. Jason can break off and do his own thing. Ivo, when he's around, can break off and do his own thing. Julie can break off and do her own thing if she's in. She's not always in all the time. And Frank can go by himself. And that's very true with us too, because Ivo's also in our band. He has this project Slaughter P. He also plays in the Midnight Fox. Scarpa can go off and do his own thing. I have my own solo stuff. Andrew can do songs by himself. And Adam has his own songs when he plays them out. So like between all of us, we could break off and kind of do our own thing, and we can play in a configuration, which is really cool. Like we did a show one time where it was just me and Andrew. Granted, I was the reason why we had to do that because I got everyone sick of COVID and didn't realize it until later. But the point remains is that we can play in any configuration and it works because we just have that level of kinship and we have that level of understanding with each other where we can feel comfortable enough being able to just play in any setting and any with as few members or as all the members as we possibly can. And that's like Ziggy. This is the first and only band I've been in where I've had that level of trust. And I'm switching instruments a lot of times. Like I'll play guitar, I'll play drums. I may or may not be playing keyboard in the future because we have that kind of coming in to play with certain originals and covers that we're going to potentially do in the next couple of weeks. But the point is that we could all trust each other and we all have great levels of musicianship and we're all friends with each other. So having that level of trust and friendship really makes the difference in a band. And you can do whatever you want and you're unstoppable.
That makes sense, and then you have the element of the Grateful Dead too, where you have simultaneous solo projects coming. So it's like you have the
Oh, 1,000%.
primary band, and then you have these other branches off to the side. You know what? As only doing the podcast mostly right now, but hoping to get back involved in the next couple of years, it makes me very excited to see the local music scene taking that direction because I do think it's powerful and it unlocks a lot of both operational business type things, making shows easier when you're in a band, being able to play different places, sharing the responsibility, but also getting that creativity uh, melting pot of creative juices flowing, which is pretty cool and unique. Which maybe this is the post-COVID world. Maybe everybody's doing this now. Who knows? I'm not out there. Maybe you all might know better than me, but it's exciting to me to observe.
Yeah, I think the future after going through this weird pandemic era, I think it has changed a lot of minds. If we're going to be honest, I think personally, I've never felt more driven to be involved, and I think being involved in the way where I feel comfortable, which I think it's bared a lot of great fruit, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, even from my perspective, I agree. Like, I feel pretty comfortable and excited about that, right? Like from my perspective, I've decided with this podcast, which is my primary creative outlet right now, that if I can't be going to shows because I'm a parent now and the scheduling is tough, at least I want to listen to and support things that are local to me. Not necessarily in geography local, but you two are, right? But local to my own social network, right? Like I'd rather listen and support someone that I could bring on the podcast, and maybe they don't have everyone listening to them. Maybe I can be one of a couple hundred people or a couple tens of people listening to their project and really pull out the genius of it and be a part of that. And I don't know if it's the pandemic or changes in technology or all a combination of all of it, but I just feel like voting my attention that way has made me feel a lot more fulfilled. That's my perspective on it. And I feel like what you all are saying with even the live groups, it's a similar thing. It's kind of banding together to make something greater than just, well, your one individual piece. This might be a good segue to say that what Harrison had proposed back in July when he was on the last episode. He said that he was thinking about this, and now it's come out. But this compilation, I think, also champions that idea. And when you listen to it, or when I had listened to it, I felt that too. It's really cool that we all kind of put this thing together, and it sounds cohesive, and it makes a statement on its own. And yeah, I think it has some long-lasting sort of value that we'll see over time, but that's just my opinion. I wanted maybe Harrison, you could describe it a little bit in case any of the listeners hadn't gone and listened to the last episode. I'll give a little intro in the beginning, but yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the compilation?
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely. Well, first of all, I completely agree with what you said about the camaraderie and the collective of the compilation and like the open mic atmosphere being true. But to give a little background about this compilation and how I got the idea for it. So I had an idea that was kind of swimming in the back of my head for a while, that I wanted to do something for mental health awareness, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I wanted to put together a compilation. So I remember a couple years ago, I've mentioned this on a number of episodes before, where my friends Max Roush and John Cause, who co-founded Pizza Bagel Records, they made compilations in the past. But those were different types of compilations. They were all food related. They had songs about food, songs about soup rather, and songs about breakfast. And so that was the first time I ever saw anybody put together a compilation of music from a collective of Jersey artists. And I liked that idea. I contributed to one of them. I would have been on the breakfast compilation had we finished the song in time, but that's neither here nor there. I eventually did put that song out. So that's kind of the unlisted extra bonus track on that compilation. But I wanted to do something like that, but for mental health. And so when I posed the idea out there in May of would anybody be interested in throwing a song on this compilation, I didn't expect anybody to actually get on board. Because you kind of go into a project like this thinking, all right, well, I'm going to put this idea out there, and if people take the bait, great. If not, at least I put it out there because it's been living in my head and I want to get this idea out. But to my eternal surprise, a lot of people said, yeah, I want to contribute. I want to write a song for this compilation or submit a song that I already have. And a lot of people, I kept a list of everybody who expressed interest. And the list is actually much longer than the compilation actually ended up being. But that's okay. I just wanted, at least for my own personal benefit, know who wanted to at least add a song. And so you, of course, were one of the people that said, I want to be on it. Ziggy, which like they're the people I knew that were going to be on it, like you and Ziggy and Andrew and Jim and Rob, like anybody from the open mic scene. I had a feeling if they had a song ready to go or wanted to work on something, they did. Ivo sent in a song. So like I started getting a lot of songs. I actually spoke to Ro, who opens the compilation. Ro's an interesting case because Ro I actually didn't meet until this year. Ro I knew because of Max and these compilations. She has appeared on, I think, both compilations. I know definitely the Soup compilation, but I'm pretty sure she's on both. But I never knew who she was, and neither did Max until she appeared on the Soup compilation. And it turns out she's a fantastic songwriter. So the fact that I put that out there was really good because then I actually got to talk to Ro, and she wanted to know more about what was going on with this compilation. So I explained what I wanted to do, and I wanted to raise money for a charity, all that jazz. And she was like, absolutely, I'll do it. And then I actually met her Memorial Day weekend. The only time I've ever really interacted with her to date. I'm sure I'll see her down the road. She's great people. But I met her under interesting circumstances. I was playing a one-off reunion show with my old band, Surprise of the Century, which actually Ziggy was there to witness that. But that was the first time I met Ro. And so we talked a little bit about the compilation, talked about a bunch of other things. So that was really great that she contributed. I actually kind of had a gut feeling that she would have done it anyway because she's the compilation queen. There are people I didn't expect though. And the biggest surprise was actually a buddy of mine named Rich Wise. Rich Wise was a guy that I had known for many, many years. He used to run an open mic in Fair Lawn called Rivara's. I don't know if I mentioned it on this podcast before, but Rivara's was a bar in Fair Lawn off 208, very close to Stasha's, like literally right around the corner from Stasha's. And it was my Tuesday night spot for years. Years since. Yeah, Ziggy's been there a number of times too. And just like Cedar Beans, just like Rivar, just like Fine Grind, there was a sense of community. That community was as tight as anything could be. That to me would have been another home had that open mic still been around. But unfortunately, once Frank Rivara sold the bar, the community kind of disappeared. And unfortunately, a couple of other people have passed away over the years. So sadly, I don't keep in contact with too many people from that community. But when I, again, put that idea out in May, Rich said, hey, I have a song. And I'm like, okay, send me what you got. And so he sent me the song, and I listened to it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is good. I just was so dumbfounded that I never heard the song. And Rich is a good songwriter, too. He has his band called Guilty Pleasures, where a lot of it is covers, but he has a bunch of originals that he plays every once in a blue moon. But I don't get to hear a lot of his originals because generally he plays covers. So the fact that
he shreds it up on this track,
Yeah.
by the way,
really good.
It's out of control.
I love
I was so pleased. I was so pleased that he sent me that song because I never heard it and until now. So it was like this hidden gem of a song that he just had lying around, and it was like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw it out there and good. So that was really exciting for me to have. Rob Janos, who again runs the open mic in Little Falls, he sent me a song, but it's not under his name. He has a group called the Sons of Someone, which he recorded with a friend of his.
That's a good song too. I couldn't figure out who that was, but okay, cool.
Who else? Oh, so my friend Ray, who goes under the name Jamie Fett when performing, he didn't know about the compilation until July. And I told him about what I was doing, and Ray being a counselor, and has also had a number of mental health issues over the course of his lifetime, sadly for very bad reasons, and still working through all that trauma, was of course down. So I knew that he was going to be down. It was just a matter of him knowing. So he's in the process of actually working on music too. I don't know when that's coming out, but he sent me a song from that collection of songs that he's recording early. So now that's the first song of his that's out in the public.
That's a dope song too.
Yeah,
Latuda.
that's a good song.
Every song on this compilation is amazing. It's a really good compilation.
It
I
was
can't even believe how good it is.
such a labor of love to do, and I'm very happy with the outcome of how everything came about. It was a lot easier to put together than I expected to. And that was one of the things that I was kind of not freaking out about, but just concerned about is how am I going to upload this? I knew Bandcamp was going to be easy because uploading things to Bandcamp is super simple. But it was the streaming stuff that took me a little bit of agina to figure out how to upload it. But once I did, it was there. And it was much more painless than I realized. But I'm, again, very happy. Also, with Scarpa's song, the thing that I didn't know until I heard it is that his girlfriend Jenny is singing the song. Now, Jenny, from what Andrew has told me, used to sing live a lot and recorded a whole bunch of stuff, but has retired from music for a very long time and came back to singing for my compilation. And I was so honored when I found that out.
That's really cool.
And I listened to it. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not Scarpa's voice. And so the fact that Jenny came out of retirement to sing on my compilation meant a lot to me. And she has a great voice. So I don't know what that means down the road. I don't know if she's going to perform. From what I understand, that doesn't seem to be the case anytime soon. But it seems like she's interested in recording music again, which is cool. And Scarpa even told me for that song, Scarpa actually originally recorded that song with his voice, but he said it didn't sound right. So then I think Jenny overheard it or was singing harmonies, and Scarpa said, hey, why don't you sing this instead? So she tracked the entire song and it worked out.
It's like After Hours by the Velvet Underground, you know?
It
like Mo Tucker
very
singing.
much sounds like a Velvet Underground song. I definitely get that vibe.
I mean, I'm not surprised. Scarpa's style is like, it's very, I think knowing and listening to his music, it has always had a little bit of like that chaos that like Velvet Underground has had. And I think one of the best part about it is that I'm still kind of like amazed at like how great of a musician like Scarpa seems to be.
And he's evolved a lot over the years. Like I remember when I was starting to go to RCC, and this is probably towards the end of him appearing at open mics, because I know he was a lot more regular over the years. But I remember seeing him and just being captivated by his performing style, because he just was very punk and dressed in all black and screamed. And to see the evolution of him as a songwriter is really fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, looking at who else? So Sean Flynn's another open micer that I've known
Sean.
for many, many years.
Same, man.
You know Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean. Sean was a regular at Fine Grind for years. I saw him weekly.
Totally. Sean and Mike, they'd come together.
Mike, his buddy Mike. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very happy to see him.
He's evolved a lot. I haven't followed his stuff. I have to. Of course, I got to have him on here. He's the homie from back in the day. But it looks like
he is very much good people. I'm trying to look at who else. Jim, I know, contributed a song, and he put out his record Metal with Lane, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And he's
we talk about every song on his podcast.
Yeah, he's really good, and he also has been showing me stuff that he's been working on. I'm really excited for him to release My Old Town. Jimmy, if you listen to this,
he's got to show me that stuff. I want to hear the new stuff.
Well, I happened to be out at open mic, and he came up to me one night. He's like, "Hey, you want to hear what I'm working on?" So we went into his car, and he put on My Old Town, and I was like, dude, this sounds fucking sick. I can't wait for you to put this out.
He's a very, very talented engineer.
Yes.
Yeah, very much.
He did all that stuff basically himself. And yeah, I can't wait to hear the new stuff.
Slider P, of course, contributed, which I also knew he was going to add a song, because Slider's like, Ivo's become one of my closest friends. And of course, I played with him, and he has such a unique vibe. I get such a Cat Stevens vibe from him, and I know he's a big fan of Cat Stevens. He's just another like prolific writer who just writes a whole bunch of good music.
Yeah.
And I remember him back when he was in T-Sex, and that was like my earliest memories of Ivo were in that band, and that band over the years has kind of dissolved, and I don't think they play, and I don't think there's any chance of them coming back together. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. But I know he's expressed interest in at least doing a reunion show here and there, but I don't know the likelihood because Slider P is so heavily active and he's in Midnight Fox. So like the number of bands that this man is in, I can't even keep track anymore because. And then he also works in Cedar Beans as a barista. Like I don't know how he sleeps. I give him all the credit in the world for doing everything, and he loves doing it. So like there's no slowing that man down. He's a treasure.
Yeah.
Andrew T. Miles contributed Shattered Glass, which was a nice contribution, and I'm very happy that one of his songs is on there. And it's also kind of takes the break away from other songs because it's the only instrumental on the album, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's on topic. I have a whole spiel that I'll put in because he's played that song live on.
I know
on
that
the
he's
podcast.
explained what the meaning's about better than I could ever.
Yeah,
but Andrew, I know I probably mentioned this when he was on, but his original intent was not to do Sloop John B. He had a song that he was working on with his buddy Adam Beener, but because of the time constraint I wanted everybody to upload songs by, that song wasn't finished in time. So we did like this makeshift cover of Sloop John B. I played lead guitar. We made it in his apartment, and it took us like a couple minutes. Banged it out in GarageBand very quickly, and so that was fun to contribute to that cover of Sloop John B. My song, which I mentioned when I was talking about Light Roast, I had a bunch of other songs that I've been working on because I am in the process of releasing an EP, which is going to come out very, very soon. Well, more on that later, but none of those songs were done in time. And I felt were more appropriate. But I felt like Silver Clouds kind of fits the theme of dealing with dark thoughts in your head, and they're just kind of trapped in there, and they have you feel like there's no way that they can just break out from your head. And I could have picked really any song because a lot of my songs deal with anxiety and mental illness and stuff like that. But Silver Clouds, I just felt like was such a cool vibe that it fit with the rest of the compilation. So I'm very glad to throw that song in there. I think the only ones left to talk about in terms of my compilation are your song, Rich, which I'm very interested to know about the creative process of how that came about, and Ziggy's song, which he's here so he can explain that song. Also, when I was putting the track list together, I kind of had an idea of the sequence once I heard all the songs. So like I knew Ro was going to open because her song's short and it feels like an intro. And then I heard Ziggy's, I'm like, closer. It's the closer. It's the closer.
Yeah.
So if you guys would like to elaborate on where you guys were coming from in terms of the songs and what you were thinking about when putting them together.
Well, Easier was a song that came from, I guess, a few months of self-doubt. Honestly, I think it's the only song where I mention my own name in it, which kind of shows how personal it is to me. And I needed to write something. I mean, the objective is always try to write something that people can still relate to. When it comes to songs that talk about mental health and the issues that go with it, but I could only talk through my experiences. So a lot of it I have felt over the past few years, and they definitely did recur a lot. A lot of it's from my own personal struggles. I think what's so important about mental health is that not everyone feels it the same way. And the thing about that is and I think the reason why is like everyone wants to label this, but that is never the case. And I wanted to show that by explaining that not only what I think, what I believe, that I'd be able to like go through these personal experiences, but also what I went through. I mean, the bridge was always kind of like a huge explanation of what I would think in my head. And I sat at the piano when I was working on this, and I knew I wanted to make it feel like I was like it was. I, I think the best part is I did not play to like like a click track or anything like that. I really wanted the song to be more freeform, kind of like classical music. All I did was kind of play the chords and I sang. And it was kind of like the second take. I did kind of struggle with the words a little bit. It took a while to record, actually, but when I finally got it,
How did you do it, Ziggy? How did you record it? You did it yourself?
yeah, it was just I mic'd the piano, mic'd the vocals. Yeah, obviously I kind of had to re-record the vocals just to get it. I do think that I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud that it's on the compilation personally, and I think it was great because I had it in my mind and I didn't know where it would go until Harrison brought the idea up, and I knew I had to finish that song.
Sick, dude. Okay, so you already had a little piece of it. How much did the bridge, or did you have more than the bridge?
I don't think I ever had the lyrics ready until I started working on it for the compilation. And
Okay.
yeah, and I knew that.
Just the feelings were.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the fact that you finished it for my compilation means a lot. That's a huge honor for me. I'm very glad that me putting the idea out there was the driving force you needed to finish that. So that's really sick that
Yeah. Uh,
you just needed that little extra
Yeah,
push. And I'm glad that I was able to
yeah.
provide that.
I'm taking a note from Steven Sondheim. He would always bring like the 11 o'clock hour song like all the way into like final rehearsals. And that's kind of how I felt when I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought it up because like here it is.
In all of its glory.
I think it's one of the most important songs on, if not the most important song on the compilation, to be honest, Ziggy. Like, I listened to. Honestly, I didn't listen to this compilation as many times as I usually would if we were doing a podcast because we scheduled this quick. Um, but I listened to it probably a 3 or 4 times in the past couple days, and I think that it being the closer and it being the longest song, and also being one of the most, if not the most, personal feeling songs. I don't think they all. I think they're all probably personal, but it just like you said, you use your name in it, and the production choices you made just make it feel like you're sitting at the piano with you, and you really feel the emotion in it. It ties the whole point of the whole thing together. And I love what you were saying. And I think us as songwriters and this compilation, the idea, Harrison, was brilliant because I hadn't even thought of this until Ziggy had just said it, right? But all of our mental, we all, at least us three here, right? Our Ziggy just said it. Harrison and I have gotten into this together before on the podcast, but we all have dealt with mental health issues, and they all are unique snowflakes of Armageddon, right? Like, and in the same way as songwriters are, I think musicians, especially open mic visiting musicians, can all relate to that because it's like every time you tell someone you're a musician, they don't understand when they're like, "What kind of music do you play?" And I'm like, "I don't fucking know. My own thing, right? It's my own unique snowflake of adventure, right?" And
Yeah.
mental health is the same way. We all have our own weird traumas that get to us, right? Like I myself, I don't know if I've brought this up too much on the podcast, but I have my own unique little like version of PTSD that, I didn't go to war or anything like that, but I am very squeamish. I fit like for with blood and shit like that, so I faint pretty easily, and I fainted as a kid. And then I got this fear of fainting where like if I'm at a public place and they start talking about how like they broke their bone and it popped out of their skin and they had to go to the like I'm like freaking leaving. Like I have to sit on the outside cuz I freak out from that, right? Like but it's not that's not the same as somebody that like actually went to Iraq or some shit. But I still have PTSD and I have to deal with it in the same sort of way, right?
You can get PTSD from anything. It's
Yeah,
kind of
exactly. And it's
crazy.
just its own, beast that I've dealt with since I was a kid. And yeah, it's interesting, and you do bond with people with that. Not only with musicians, but once you start to talk to people and you realize that they had their own mental health issues that they've dealt with, especially, I mean, I guess I could talk a little bit about my song, like Harrison. So you mentioned this, and I kind of was like, I haven't written a song in a while. I've mentioned on the show a bunch of times I'm sitting on an album that I just haven't had time to record. So I kind of was like, cool, this is which has halted me creatively, right? So I'm kind of like, cool, I'll just jump in, I'll write a song really quick for the compilation. It didn't end up being really quick. It took a normal amount of time. But with that, right, like I kind of was trying to generalize and speak to those demons because it could be somebody that's suffering from a substance addiction. It could be somebody that just has general anxiety, but you could speak the same language and understand where they're coming from at the same time, right? You know?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the whole point of this compilation is that people bringing in songs all about different aspects of mental health and all coming at it from completely different angles. And obviously, it's going to get personal because this is just a personal subject, and a lot of people can relate to it, especially the creative individuals like us. We get it, I think, more than most people do. Um, so that's why I wanted to do this. And also, I like Pizza Big O Records compilations. I wanted to tie it to a charity. And so I was kind of toying with the idea of which charity to do. And then I was talking with Ray, and Ray gave me a bunch of good suggestions. And the one I ultimately chose was the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project is an organization specifically for those in the LGBTQ plus community who, in some cases, have attempted suicide. And to raise money for mental health and awareness for mental health for that community. But I think that goes a long way for any community. But I like the idea when that was explained to me about what their mission statement was, and I thought that this is a good organization to give money to. So as of now, the organization I donated $50 from all the purchases from Bandcamp. With streaming, it's a little bit harder because streaming, unfortunately, is the number of streams for an individual artist are not nearly as much as Taylor Swift or Ed
Oh
Sheeran
yeah.
or Drake.
Yeah.
So, so like, I wanted to put it on streaming just because I wanted to have that option for people who stream. But I knew that the revenue that I was going to get from this compilation was going to come from Bandcamp because that's a lot more direct and a lot more targeted towards individual artists. And I hope that that business can stay afloat because of all the parenting companies. I really hope it doesn't go in the way of other places because Bandcamp is so good for DIY artists and independent artists. And I don't want to see a place like that fall to the cracks because there's no other place like it. Um,
No, I agree.
but
I mean, you can donate money on Spotify and things like that, but it's not the same as just the pay what you want format. I agree completely, especially for
so
something
Yeah.
like this.
yeah, it was just too important because so that's why I did it to Bandcamp first, and then ultimately put it on streaming just because I wanted to give people the option to do both. Um, but I'm still people can still buy the compilation. It's only $2. If you look up the Creative Collective on Bandcamp or Songs to Add Light to Dark on any streaming platform that you use or desire to use, it's there. Um, all the proceeds are going to that organization, the Trevor Project, and I've been really humbled by the response. that I've gotten from this, because it was just an idea that I had. I didn't think people would be on board, and there were a lot of people who wanted to contribute that unfortunately weren't able to. Like my friend Craig, he wanted to write a song for this compilation, and I of course was welcoming anybody who wanted to do anything. And as time went on, and he was messaging me, he wasn't able to get a song in time, which was unfortunate. But the kid is very busy. He is like you. He's got a family. He's got a child, a 1-year-old. He's got a dog. He works as an actuary. He's taking tests to become an actuary, like a full-time actuary. So like he's got a lot on his plate. And he said that just writing songs is hard. And truer words have never been spoken in my life. Especially for someone who's not actively writing songs, I can't even imagine the level of stress it must have been for him to try to bang something out and put it on this compilation. As nice as it would have been to have him on the compilation, maybe someday down the road we'll work out something together. But I don't know.
I feel for that totally. Like Craig, shout out to you, because I almost didn't make it for the same reason, right? Like the one thing that held me, Harrison, was right after that podcast that we recorded and you told me about this, and I was like optimistically like, yeah, I'm gonna write a song for this, count me in. I went on a walk with my family and I was thinking about it. I shouldn't have been. I should have been focused on the walk, right? But I'm like, what kind of, as a songwriter, I'm like, what? You said it was for mental health, and I just thought of like going to therapy and they're like, think of your happy place. And I was like, yeah, but when you go to therapy and they say that, you're like, this is bullshit, because my happy place is like burning on fire right now. Like I don't have a happy place. And that's what gave me the idea for the trouble in my happy place. And that's all I had right then. Right. And I was able to kind of pull it out, but it's tough. And I feel for that, because for songwriters like that, like I struggled to put it together. It took me quite a while to do it because I'm out of practice. And, to get far and not to finish sucks. Should do we should do another one to catch those ones that didn't make it.
Yeah, I thought about doing another type of compilation again, but I want to wait a little bit and see what the inspiration is this time. And I kind of want to do something along the same lines as what I did this time, but it's too early to tell. I have to really be of the right mindset and have a topic that I want to target and stuff like that before I tackle something like this again, because this is also very tasking on me, putting everything together.
In what way? I'm so curious, Harrison, because I've thought about
mostly because I just didn't know how quickly things are I mean, to my surprise, a lot of people send songs very quickly, but I didn't know how many songs I was going to get. I didn't know how long I had to wait. And I kept extending the deadline and stuff like that. And it was like minor things.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything too crazy, but
no, there's a lot though. You can feel for the podcast a little bit now. So I was
I remember, that's why I also wanted to get songs fully finished. But I even thought about that, and like even rough recordings, I would have accepted those. And a lot of the compilation has a mix of everything, because I don't want it to be a perfectly sounding, like elaborately orchestrated song. I mean, it's great if it is, but it doesn't have to necessarily be, because this is a topic where it's messy and it's rough and it's unfinished business. So it may not be the final product, but at least there's something done, and at least you're putting your thoughts out there. So I kind of want to, if I do another compilation like this again, I kind of want to do it in the same veins, just because I like the variety of production choices. It doesn't necessarily have to be polished and shiny and new. It could be completely unmixed. And it sounds like things should be in different places, but that's just what mental health is. It's messy and untangled, and you don't know what to do with it yet.
Yeah. Also, in addition to that, I think the fact that we are all, independent musicians, and we're not backed by really anything. I think the way that this was put together and arranged, I think it suits us best, because I think in the end we're not those $1 million earning musicians that like have every opportunity brought onto us. We've kind of had to create our own ways, our own atmosphere in order to write and record these songs. That's why I love this so much, because it's not a now that's what I call music. It's not like a friggin' kids bop.
It's not Pop Goes Punk.
Oh God,
Sorry.
we do not mention that.
No, you're right though, Ziggy.
Yeah, I think that's why I love this, because like I think ultimately it's like every one of us, and in a way that doesn't seem half-assed or anything. Like even if it sounds rough, it's great.
And I actually did that as a production choice. My song sounds completely different than my other music that I've done. I wanted it to make a statement in the production of what you just said. Like, it's like I'm not trying to have anything that sounds like that. I want it to sound exactly like something that has been made just by me. And I think that your song is really similar, even though they sound completely different. And I love that they're right next to each other because of that,
Yeah.
especially with that intro little sound that you have.
That was all carefully planned out.
Of course it was. So
I
tell us
was
about
like,
it, Harrison.
I looked at the songs and I listened to all of them and I just thought, how do I want to put this in order? So, as I mentioned before, I knew Row was going to open because the song was very ominous and kind of sets the stage for everything and says a lot without saying much. And then going into Everything Hurts, I think is nice because nice lighthearted song. Um, and Jim just sounds gorgeous on it. And then I just wanted to throw everything right to the wrench with Cement Shoes and Rich's song, which is this hole in the wall that just explodes into this sonic soundscape and kind of knocks your face out. And then after those heavy hitting songs, it's like, okay, time for some jazz with Andrew Miles. And then putting Ivo in the like kind of towards the middle kind of just made sense because he has like that. His song just had that like emptiness and acoustic sounding vibe, and then me following that, I didn't really care where I went, to be honest. I just wanted to insert myself somewhere in the middle, like because I don't want to be the center of this pot of this compilation. So like I just smack dab myself somewhere in the middle, like I don't really care, middle. Then after that, is Rob's song, which I really liked, and has like the country twang and stuff like that. And I actually made an error in the tracking. I originally had Jamie, Fett, and then Andrew, but I kind of like the way I worked it out anyway, with Andrew having his cover of Souped on B and then Jamie going into his song. It has like that nice flow of simple acoustic ukulele vibe. And then going into Sean's, which is in a way kind of similar to Rich's song, where it's very heavily orchestrated and big and bombastic. And then Scarpa is kind of like the clouds opening up just slightly in a way. Not by much, mind you, but just enough. And then going into your song, which I was also just very excited when you kept sending me mix after mix after mix after mix, because I just wanted to see what else you would add to it. And then hearing the final product, I'm like, okay, cool. This is definitely going to be towards the end. And then again, when I heard Ziggy's, I knew that it had to be the closer because it didn't sound like anything else. It sounded like none of the other songs, and it had the right vibe for closer. Also, just sounded like a Broadway song, which is, I know, your entire style, which the shoe definitely fits in a good way. You talked about Sondheim, and I'm just like, yeah, listening to that again, that makes sense. That definitely checks out. but it also, like you said, it ties everything together in a way that none of the other songs do.
Yeah, and then also, right, you got to talk about the ghost sequencing, right? And we never talked about this before, Harrison. We've talked quite a bit about unlocking albums and listening to music, etc., right? But like there's this ghost sequencing between track 13 and track 1 between Ziggy and Roe, which I think works really well together. Like the
Yeah.
ending of Ziggy's song, then going into the sort of softness of Roe's song lets you be able to listen to this song to this compilation over and over again, which I
Yeah.
love. I think you did
I'm
a
a
really
big
good job.
fan of
Oh
that.
yeah.
I'm a big fan. Like, when I was a huge Dream Theater fan, they used to do this a lot. There were four albums where they did this, where one album would end and then it would pick up kind of in the next album. So it started with Scenes from Memory. At the end of Finally Free, you hear static. It's this rock opera where Nick is going through this 1928 and he's trying to figure out the connection of this murder and how it connects to his life and all that, and he finally understands like he's no longer afraid of death, and then ultimately the therapist kills him. That's how the story ends. Sorry to spoil it for anybody who's never listened
This
to the
is
album,
yeah.
but it ends
This is
with
scenes,
the
right?
therapist going, it's a scenes, yeah. So it ends with open your, because he falls asleep on the couch after having a drink and watching the news. This therapist comes to the house and goes, "Open your eyes, Nicholas." He goes, "What?" And then the record stops, and all you hear is static. Now the next album is 6 Degrees, where it opens with that same static sound, and you hear the Glass Prison, which is also the first song of Mike Portnoy's 12 Steps of recovering from alcohol addiction.
Whoa.
So I like that parallel. Then that record ends with the 6 Degrees suite, and the last chord that they play in the 6 Degrees suite is an E chord played on the keyboard on the organ, and that fades out. The next album is Train of Thought, that opens with a fade in of the E chord right before they start As I Am. Then In the Name of God ends with an F, a single F note, which begins the next album, Octavarium. So, like, over the sense of four
That's
albums.
so cool. Okay. I never knew that.
Yeah.
The only time I've heard of that is with Blink 182 with Anthem and Anthem Part 2 between Enema of the State and Take Off Your Pants and
Yeah.
Jacket.
Oh, yeah, true.
But that's way less
Yeah.
intricate.
Yeah. We call. Yeah. There's a term for that. I think, although I'm not sure if they call it in media res.
Totally. Yeah. I know all about In Media Res. Yeah. The Iliad and the Odyssey. Those are like my favorite books,
Oh.
and they both
Yeah.
start
One of my
in
favorite
Media
comics
Res.
does it too. The Inkle.
The Inkle? I
Yes.
never heard of that. I'll have to check that out.
Oh, it's amazing. Like, yeah, you gotta check it out. The art is great, and like the writing is
How do you spell it?
Incal. The writer is like crazy. Like he's made crazy films, and he is like a practicing shaman.
No way. Cool. Okay.
Like kind of in the same way, kind of like Neil Gaiman is, sort of, but like even more, crazy.
Yeah, but that makes sense, Ziggy. Because you're right. Because for Dream Theater, right, then you really are. If you pick up any one album, it's in media res, right? You're starting. If you just happen to pick up the third one, you're in the middle of something.
Yeah.
It's referencing the thing before. Yeah, that's cool. I wonder if there's. I've never heard anybody talk about the repeating. Like vinyl. I don't know if they cared about that as much. You could definitely tell, albums stopping when you have to flip, right? And I think that there's something to that. Like we talked about before, Harrison, with the EPs, with the light roast and dark roast. I think there's a forgotten art of the amount of length that a vinyl has on each side, because it's a
Yeah.
similar amount to an EP.
There is actually a vinyl that came out recently, where at the very end it actually kind of loops a single like musical idea at the very end of the record, and that's Lucifer on the Sofa by Spoon. And on the vinyl version, on the very last track, when you get to the end of the vinyl, it kind of just loops the same sound over and over again, and just kind of infinitely repeats. And it's the only vinyl I've heard in recent years that actually does that, because the record just ends after the song if you listen to it digitally, but on vinyl it's different.
No way. That's
Wow.
cool. I'm gonna get that
Yeah,
vinyl now.
I kind of want to get it on vinyl at some point. I love that album too, so all the more reason to own it. But
I never got into Spoon. I know I turned my camera on, and I never
oh,
listened
that's a
to
cool song.
anything else. That's the only song I know.
See, it's funny. I'm not a huge fan of Gimme Fiction as I am of the next album, Ga 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 Ga, which is I think the bigger album. I like that album a lot. I really loved They Want My Soul when it came out in 2014. Like I'm kind of like I'm not the biggest fan of Spoon myself, but I loved Ga 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 Ga. I love They Want My Soul and Lucifer on the Sofa. I think are fantastic albums.
Nate, I have nothing, bad to say about Spoon. I just never got deep into them. Give me TV on the radio any day. That's
Oh,
that's
Oh
where I
TV on
yeah.
the
get my
radio is
fix of
sick.
that.
Every time I turn on Sirius XMU, I hear a song by them every morning on my drive to work, and I'm just reminded of how good they are.
They really are. They're so
Absolutely.
good. There's nothing I like more than driving into New York City and listening to Desperate Youth, Bloodthirsty Babes. Is that the one? There's one with this crazy song. Like there's a couple of them, but there's one that's maybe it's not that. Maybe it's not that EP. Whatever. There's one song that's so heavy that they play, and I just love driving through Manhattan listening to that one song.
Yep, I love the last album they put out because I'm such a huge fan of the song "Happy Idiot."
Oh, that's a good song.
I
Yeah.
love that song, and one of my favorite
Mhm.
lyrics in that entire song is "I'm gonna bang my head to the wall till I feel nothing at all." Such poetry in a single line. It's like that's the kind of songwriting I strive for because it says everything and nothing at the same time. It's just perfect. Yeah, that's one they play on XMU a lot, but they play a bunch of stuff from like Dear Science and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And every once in a while, I'll hear Wolf Like Me.
Yeah.
Their their performance on Letterman, if you've never seen it, is awesome
It's
too.
oh my god.
So it
It's
was right when
amazing.
Return to Cookie Mountain came out, and it's in the top tier of greatest performances that have come out of Letterman's tenure on Late Show.
Oh, cool. I actually probably saw. I was like, that was like what I was into when that stuff came out. Um, I probably saw it back in high school. I forget
Yeah.
because I remember there was like Arcade Fire during Funeral, another one. I don't know if it was Letterman, but one of the night shows when they had like they played Leica and they were hitting the drumsticks on like the motorcycle helmets. That was
Yeah,
Wow.
also an all-time favorite. That's a badass one.
Mute Math too is really fun. Like when they
I
put
never
out the
got into
first
Mute
album,
Math. They're good.
Yeah.
I love their first album. They're a very interesting band. They're not really a band anymore. It's just Paul, which is a shame because their drummer was insanely good. Um, but like their first record is so cool. It's very I don't know how to describe it. It's like very indie rock, but very spacey. It's like kind of space rock in a way. And they ultimately kind of went in a more Tame Impala esque direction in their later body of work. They also did a collaborative album with 21 Pilots because they were an opener for their Emotional Roadshow
Wow.
tour. So in one year, I got to see them twice live as a headliner and as an opening act. And during typical, the last song they played, which is their biggest song, Paul had this inflatable mattress, and so like during the end of that song, in Terminal 5 on the floor, all you see is this giant floating mattress with him singing on it and just getting passed around on the floor of Terminal 5. It was awesome.
Oh.
It was really sick.
Block Party's kind of that way too. It's the band is mostly Kelly now, but like back in the day, their first their first two albums were definitely amazing.
Oh, I swear by Silent Alarm.
Oh yeah.
I swear by that album. And like I know a year later, like the Arctic Monkeys kind of erased everything because they were just the biggest fucking band in the world whenever People Say I Am came out. But I was so into Silent Alarm at that time.
Yeah, and like I think their second album is pretty good too. Um,
A Weekend in the City? Is that what it is?
yes,
I never even listened to that album.
it's
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 good? Cool.
it's more poppy, but I love it anyway.
I actually really liked Intimacy too, but like nothing was as good as like nothing popped the way Silent Alarm did. Those songs just hit so hard, like Eating Glass, Positive Tension, Banquet,
Oh, so good.
um, This Modern Love.
But yeah, the one good thing about that like is that Matt Tong is playing with Algiers. That band is pretty damn good. I think it's taking over from where Block Party was should have left off,
Oh,
or probably
cool.
did leave
I haven't
off.
heard of Algiers. I'm going to check that out too.
I think I mean it's more noisier. There's a little bit of hip hop. They released an album this year. It's pretty decent. I would say take a look at like the past two albums because those are like really great, really cool, like crazy post punk.
Cool. I definitely will. I loved that. I loved Silent Alarm at the time too. I think
Oh yeah.
Arctic Monkeys pulled me, but for me it was the Libertines that really pulled me in a different direction more
Oh,
than Arctic
the
Monkeys.
I'm
Libertines.
not super familiar with the Libertines. I just know
Oh
of
man,
them. I'm not.
dude, they're so good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if they still hold up if you didn't get into them back then or not, but for me,
Like there's so many bands of that era that were just big at the time. Like obviously the Strokes are the biggest probably of all those bands. But like Interpol was also coming in that scene at that same time frame. Another band that I want to like more than I do, and interestingly enough, my favorite album of theirs is not Turn on the Bright Lights. It's Antics. I always loved that album because Evil is one of the coolest songs I ever remember from that time frame. And I still think it's their best song.
the one song is the first I ever learned on an organ. The one that we ain't going to the town, we're going to the city. What's that
Oh,
song? The first song, Next Exit.
okay.
Yeah, that's the first thing I learned on organ when that
Nice.
came out. Antics. You guys ever
I
listen to
love
the Zootons? You ever get into them? I've been listening to them
I
again
know
a
Yes, the
lot.
of them and
Zootons. I remember on MTV when I heard Pressure Point, and
Yeah, Pressure Point.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's my favorite song from them. Like everyone knows Valerie
me too.
because Amy Winehouse,
Of course.
but I think
Pressure Point.
but like their first album with like a lot of great stuff, Zooton Fever, and
Yep, yeah, exactly. I just was showing my kids that. We were on a car ride, like a long car ride, and I put on that first album exactly. Zooton Fever, Pressure Point. Pressure Point is so much faster than I remember it.
oh yeah,
Like I haven't listened to it for years and I'm like, "Wow, it's really fast."
they
I wouldn't
probably
have
play
played
it
it that
faster live.
fast.
They probably
But
played it faster live.
yeah, I got to look up some live. I watched a live performance of Valerie recently, a couple days ago,
Yeah.
because I never saw them play it live, and I was like, okay, I got to see that. But I kind of want to see if there's any like 2004 Who Killed the Zootons
I also listened recently
performances.
to they're more of a one hit wonder, but the album is actually pretty good. Junior Senior.
Oh,
Oh, I don't know them.
oh, I know. I
Everybody move your feet and feel united. Oh, it was a huge song back in the day. Um, it's two singers, and the one guy's go can't stop the beat and go stop the beat and go stop, don't stop the beat and go, boom, boom, boom. I hear it a lot in like car commercials or,
yes, I remember that.
and I was like, I don't know what this song is, but it's amazing. I need to know this band, and for a long time I had no idea who it was. But Junior Senior are from Denmark.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the members is
Um,
now like a big songwriter. I don't know
yeah,
who he's written songs for, but like I think a lot of big
yeah.
name artists.
Yeah, so the album's called Don't Stop, Don't Stop the Beat, and the song is Move Your Feet.
Yeah.
That's a fun song. They're more of like a one-hit wonder, but the album is actually pretty darn good and is kind of overlooked because there's just so much of that type of music coming out in the 2000s that a lot of stuff kind of got lost in the lurch.
Yeah, that's what. Did you ever get into the Rapture?
Oh my God.
I know the Rapture.
The Rapture.
I know the Rapture.
They hold up. The Rapture is cool because they started out as a hardcore band. So like when
Yeah.
you listen to their first EP, Out of the Races and Onto the Tracks, they have that one song in Superbad. They have Out of the Races and Onto the Tracks, but they were like a hardcore band in Portland or something like that. And then when they came to New York, they decided to become a punk band or a dance pop band. But that first EP has like the mixture of it. But then their last album has that song "It Takes Time to Be a Man." I don't know if you guys ever heard that. That album didn't get that much love, but that song is like one of my top 20 songs of all time.
Yeah. That first that first album was actually considered the best album of 2003 by Pitchfork.
Really? Yeah, I could see that. That is in the top. I almost would give that for myself as after in the aftermath now. I think Echoes is probably one of my favorite albums of that era for sure. Like it holds up like no other, right? Like how could you beat House of Jealous Lovers? It's just such a strong song. And Sister
I
Savior
Need
too.
Your Love. Oh my God, James Murphy? That makes a lot of sense. James Murphy co-wrote a few of these songs. James Murphy is LCD Sound System, and they're to me one of the best bands to combine dance and rock together.
Right, and it's right at that time. I think LCD Sound System may have come out even after Echoes.
2005 was the first LCD album, um, which is funny enough because that's like they became such a more prolific band after that. Like the first album has got a lot of good songs, like Daft Punk's "Playing My House" and "Tribulations" and "Your City's a Sucker." Like those are all great. Like "Losing My Edge," all those are great
Yeah.
songs. The moment they dropped "Sounds of Silver" is when they went from being just a small little indie band to timeless. That record from start to finish is perfect. There is no low point on that record. The moment that Get Innocuous starts and the moment New York, I Love You But Dragging Me Down ends,
Mhm.
you're just in it for the ride and everything in between. And then This Is Happening is just as good. Like how like they pulled an Oasis, but second and third album instead of first and second album.
Except I think the first album is so good. Like, but
Oh, I
I'm
no
very
knock on the first
biased in
album by
that.
any means, but like Sounds of Silver is just like everyone talks about the sophomore slump. That is not a case of that.
Yeah. No, not with LCD Sound System. No. And of that era, Sophomore Slump was a huge thing to get over, right?
Yeah,
Like
for
Yeah.
sure.
especially before we close out, I want to open up an interesting topic while we're all three here. Um this compilation, I think it was something really interesting that we all contributed to. I think it was a great idea that you had, Harrison. Obviously, you were taking inspiration from the Pizza Bagel Records guys, John and Max, right? But um, and with them too, right? Like I've followed their stuff, and I think that they're doing really really cool stuff. And we've talked about a bunch of different things. We've talked about the open mic nights flourishing. We've talked about the Andrew and the Valentines and Midnight Fox project kind of model for this new post COVID music scene philosophy that we all have kind of been leaning into. I want to just take maybe if we still have the time, I think you guys do, right? Like, but let's take 15 minutes just for fun and brainstorm. Each of us take a couple minutes and just see extrapolate out what could the future look like for us as small time self-imposed almost, do-it-yourself artists in this collective.
Oh my god.
What do you see? I mean, and you know, I see you, Ziggy, right? Like, think out loud, think through it. But like, you know, just for
That's such a
fun,
loaded
we're
question.
gonna edit through it and do that, right? I have a friend that was also a guest, and I recommend you both follow this podcast that they have. It's called Tools for Time Traveling, and what they do, they're doing it for uh a bunch of different creative professions, but they started with music for various reasons. The whole thing was to use the ideas of futurism and extrapolate them onto the music industry. And I haven't talked to them for maybe a year now. I need to have them again on the podcast after like AI has advanced and COVID has settled down, just to see where they're at, because they think about this on every episode. But just for us right now, I think we're a unique group to think about what would the future look like. And I'll start, right, because I know it's a loaded question and I know you'll need to marinate on it. Someone has reached out to me from another music scene in Maryland. This guy's really cool and I want to have him on soon. His band's called The Hollow Truths, and his podcast is called The Part-Time Rockstar Podcast. And he has all people, the theme is people that are part-time rock stars, right? But one thing that I think is really cool that he did is he was able to somehow put on his own music festival where all the guests from the podcast come and perform. And I think that is fucking badass. For my podcast, that's something that I have on the bucket list, right? Like I would love to do that myself. And even seeing the compilation that you've done, Harrison, I'd love to do something similar to that as well, where I offer out to guests or similar listeners, etc., and try to kind of amplify the individualism of artists.
It's funny, I've also had that idea too about putting on a festival of local artists, because especially for me, and just knowing a whole bunch of people, not just in the open mic scene, but just from playing out in a bunch of Jersey shows, have like a multi-day like Lollapalooza or Coachella, but on a much lower scale. I've had that idea too of doing that, just from all the connects that I have. A lot has changed because a lot of the bands that I know are no longer together. Like I'm not going to go and ask Gene Pool. Gene Pool doesn't exist anymore. But for example, but I know so many people, and I wanted to do something like that on my own, but I just don't know how to go about doing that. I feel like that should just be a thing. Like we should all have our own mini festivals. And I know that, like, again, Johnny Knollwood does his
Yeah.
and Jimmy's does theirs, but I feel like that's not enough because there's so much in the wide world of New Jersey DIY music, and there's so many different scenes that a lot of times they overlap with one another. So like it shouldn't matter. I would hopefully like to see not so much of a I would like to see there not be such a big divide, because I feel like there is a big divide in the music scene, and there shouldn't be because we're all under the same fucking umbrella. We're just different genres and we overlap. So like there shouldn't be this level of tension because we're all trying to do the exact same thing in our own respective rights, and we all do it well. My biggest thing for me is that I try to break the barrier of not making everything a competition, because I know it's so easy to get into that headspace, and a lot of people are stuck in that headspace and want to make everything a competition when it's not. We do this because we want to. We do this because we have to. We do this because we have a hunger for it. And if we don't like doing it, then we should be doing it. What's the point? So I've always kind of came into the Jersey scene with that headspace and that mindset. And I've met a lot of really great people from it. And the running joke with my friends is that I know everybody. And to a degree, that's actually true, just because I like getting to know people. I like getting to know their music. And I like knowing as much about the local bands as I do knowing about my favorite artists, and having that level of lore and backstory and where their inspirations came from and what drives them to create and what drives them to perform or what drives them to do whatever they do. Because there's so many different people who do, like obviously like you, Ziggy, you film a lot and you do live recordings and you also record your own music and all that. John Cos makes videos, Max records, Skylar records, you do your podcast. It should just be a giant cesspool of creative energy and a giant
I agree.
cesspool of community, and not just individual communities that ultimately will cross paths with one day. I would love to see there not be such a big divide.
Yeah, exactly. I think the ironic thing about this is that while our communities are slowly coming together, but in terms of like, we're crossing paths, we're being billed on shows together, and we're cooperating so much together, and I think that's what's great is that the experience is happening. A lot of the artists in the mainstream industry are the opposite. I think in terms of business, a lot of it's just for PR. I Okay. I mean, like for example, a lot of collaborations that are coming in from like the mainstream music industry, a lot of it is forced. It seems forced. Whereas where we are right now, I occasionally jump up with the Valentines, and I sing backup with them sometimes. That seems like a natural thing. Frank plays with them as well. I think what's great is that we're all like we all can cross, we can all find a way to like create something that's very authentic to both sides and really kind of like a great community. Andrew and Ray have been playing together for a while. um all of our friends are like working together and hanging out together, and I feel like we're going to see more of that. We're going to see a lot of great things come from that in a way that probably has not been felt for decades. And I think that's great because the modern model of music that apparently came out in the past, I want to say the past 10 years, I think it still feels new. And I guess in the 10 years of like Spotify being like the main thing and all these mainstream music artists probably earning more from it, I think the fact that when they are chasing the algorithm, which is a very recurring thing, in the digital age, I feel like that is slowly turning against them, and
Yep.
which is a sign that there needs to be authenticity in music in order for it to really like resonate with people. This is why I feel like the creation of AI, I don't fear it as much, because when it comes down to it, we still will know when the heart is in any creation.
Absolutely. I had this same conversation with a buddy of mine who works in the AI field, who also has worked as a mixing engineer, and I completely agree, Ziggy. I think from me with AI, I think there is a threat for sure for it to be able to create things that are comparable to the creator, but that creator still needs to exist to push it to create. And at least from my perspective, as a consumer and creator, I would much rather consume something you created from AI than something that a major record label has consumed, because I know you as a person or I'm invested in the music scene. And maybe we're biased here, but that's fine, right? Like, that's part of this conversation. But
Yeah,
yeah, like,
yeah, exactly.
I think that what's getting built up is like, fine, where does it go, right? Like, are they going to just create, like, we can create our own gorillas now, maybe, right? Like, us three right here could maybe do that in a couple nights and have AI create some characters and make up some fake music and do whatever, right? But like, who's going to watch it if everyone can do that, right? Like, you're only going to want to consume the stuff that people you care about are creating. Sure. And the other thing I wanted to add into here is if you do some Googling, I think the numbers are often fake and sort of deceptive, but so you have to do some actual, real Googling. I can't do it while we're sitting here and talking at the same time, but I'm pretty sure that new music streams have been on the decline compared to legacy recording streams too in the
Yeah.
music industry, and there's something to that. And I don't know if it's necessarily because of a drop in quality entirely. I think that that's definitely at play, like you said, I think that's totally a contributor. But then we're also dealing with the fact that there's this conversation that's happening, and like we're talking about the Grateful Dead, and I'm just using them. It could be anybody. It could be Led Zeppelin. It could be Blind Willie McTell, whatever. But we have access to all of that now. We can go and watch the Block Party performance, or the TV on the radio performance on Letterman. So there's a lot of competition for the attention, where you could just go and get anything you want. So you're competing with the best all the time. So you're either competing with the best, or what I think we've all been kind of saying here, again, in our biased sort of outlook of this, but like you can compete with the best, or you can compete with the things that are close by, right? Like in your own social network.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that that's all valid, and I agree with everything that you all are saying. Other thoughts marinating? Anything else, Harrison?
Just trying to see if there's anything in right now. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that right now. I'm sure that
Oh, I'm gonna
this
ask
is
it every
something
time we're on here. Like this has like become something that I've been asking more often, because that podcast is one of my favorites. Tools for time traveling. I can't like prop it up enough. It's such a genius idea. I mean, they've had like the people that founded Sonic bids on there. They've had people from record labels. They've had people that are just randomly creating things in Atlanta. People that are creating these collective sort of what are they called? Meta labels. I don't know if you've heard of meta labels before, but they're like I think the thing that like Lil Nas X did with the shoes is a technically a meta label, where they're like crowd funded sort of GoFundMe type things. The compilation you did, Harrison, is a good example. I could see us. I think doing it for charity is a great idea, and I think we should do that too. I think we should also try to do it to see if we can like reinvest back into something at some point as well, right? Like if we do something like that, then maybe we have enough to rent a place to do our own festival, something like that too. Anyway, yeah. So that was the future, um, according to us. I think it's good time to cut it. I'll let Ziggy plug first, because this is your first time on the show. Give the listeners some places to find you.
All right. So s- so obviously you can find my music on ziggy-grover.bandcamp.com. I have a YouTube channel where a lot of it has been mostly music videos, but also other stuff as well, called Emilio Vision, Emilio Dash Vision, and obviously I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm not that hard to find. Also, uh, although Instagram is official Emilio Vision, and that's also my TikTok. Which again, that's another platform that apparently is getting very popular.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll link all this in the show notes. So if people want to click, all of it will be in the show notes. If you're listening on Spotify, the songs will be playing as you go along. Just click on one of them to see the full compilation. Harrison, you're up. Where can people find
So,
you?
well, I think the most important thing to plug right now is creativecollective.bandcamp.com. That is where you can find the compilation. If you look for it on Spotify or Apple Music, Songs to Add Light to Dark is the name of the compilation title. You could find all the songs there. Definitely check out the compilation and donate $2 or more if you want. You can choose how much you want to donate. Again, all the proceeds for that are going to go to the Trevor Project, and any and all profits are greatly appreciated. And even if you just share the compilation,
How
that's
long are those
enough.
profits going to go? Like, how long are you going to track that? As long as you can.
I mean, I'm just tracking when people buy.
Gotcha.
So I kind of have my own little system.
Cool. So
in terms of
yeah,
my music, you can find Harrison. In terms of my music, you can look it up, harrisonbeef.bandcamp.com. Everything's there. Spotify, Apple Music, it's all there.
I'll link to the shows
I'm
you've been
also in
on
the
too.
process of working on new. Was that like you could look on previous episodes that I've been on where I tell you all of that, but the important one is the creativecollective.bandcamp.com. That's the one that I'm going to heavily promote, and check it out, listen to it, donate. If not, Songs that I'd Like to Dart, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, it's all there.
Sounds good. Yeah. And, for me, if you got this far, follow this show. Do it. You've listened to 2 hours. You'll like the rest of the episodes. And yeah, if you already follow, go into the show notes, click on the shop.cerasonic.com and buy some merch to support the show. And that's it.
creativecollective1.bandcamp.com. There is a Creative Collective before that, the Creative Collective 1.
Gotcha.
.bandcamp.com.
Here's an excerpt from episode 30 of this podcast, where Meadowwood Lane frontman Jim Blass talks about the song Everything Hurts, which is also featured on this compilation. If you want to hear more of that conversation, check the show notes. I link to that episode there.
What about Everything Hurts? Let's talk about that song now.
Sure. So, in a literal way, I was fatigued. I was working very long hours and not sleeping enough, and so it started in a very physical place. You know, the hands, the feet, the heart, the chest. Physical ailments, and then um, in songs, I tend to like a twist. I tend to like there should be at least 2, if not more, components where you point to the chorus, you point to the hook, you point to it. And so it started as a childhood memory. It started as being afraid to climb into the bathtub because the tile was cold, and then it went into, the moment where I can't even get up and leave the house anymore because I'm, you know, it's depressed, it's fatigued, it's whatever. And then it goes into another childhood story. I was in Louisiana. I was in New Orleans the day before Katrina.
Wow.
And that was the literal truth, is that we drove away as the storm destroyed the city. And so putting all these things together, each an isolated event, but things that produce that kind of feeling of inactivity, of just, you look at the world and you go, how could you move under circumstances like this? How could you get up? How could you go and do things? So it's meant really to be, okay, yeah, it's from my story, but it's meant really for anybody that's got that feeling, that exhaustion, to find themselves in.
That's cool. That's kind of what I thought that it was, but I didn't know that Katrina story was real. That's wild.
Yeah. That I guess lucky. You ever
Yeah.
look at people that that suffer and go, I could have made such a story about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this case, I saw them very close, through a pane of rental car glass.
Man, that's insane.
On episode 24 of the podcast, Andrew T. Miles talks about his song Shatter the Glass. This song is also featured on this compilation, and here's an excerpt from that episode. Like the others, if you want to hear this full episode, check the show notes. I link to it there. Do you want to play a song for us? We've been going for maybe about 20 minutes now. I think it'd be a good time to play something. Do you want to talk about it first?
Yeah, the first one I'll do is Shatter the Glass. Speaking of, like coming in with a high energy piece when there's few people in the room, let's just say. Yeah, that's a bit of an up-tempo one I wrote back in 2015 about the idea of like breaking through, like kicking down the walls, like tearing down all the stuff that keeps you from living your truth, being your authentic self, breaking through what keeps you from being you. So here's what that one is.
Sick, man. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a little funky a little bit. I liked it very
Yeah.
much. That's a cool effect. What you got? What do you have going on? That one at the end that you were kind of bending with. What is that?
The thing I did like toward like the very end,
Yeah, but it almost sounded like you had that like a wah effect going on the whole time.
that thing.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, I have two wheels. I have a pitch bend wheel, which goes, and I have
cool.
this expression wheel, which sort of like bends the sound a little bit, like
Ah,
that thing.
cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
thank you.
Cool. So Shatter the Glass, right? When did you write this song?
2015.
What's sort of the genesis of it?
I was just that's a song that came to me in pieces over a period of like 2.5 years. Heard this little bit of melody one day. I was just humming it. I was like, okay, what is that going to turn into? And then later on, some other parts of it added on, and then some chords here or there. It's like, okay, so this is what it's going to be. 2015's moment, Shatter the Glass.
Nice.
Because back when I had my previous keyboard, there was always something I wanted to record with this particular synth and electric piano setting. And I was like, this is the moment for that one to come alive. Now that keyboard is no more because it died after 12 years. But that was the first one I got to record with that particular sound. But yeah, it has a new life in this keyboard now.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. Like, I mean, this is one where I appreciated the instrumentation you picked for it. We talked about this last time.
Mm-hmm.
This one works really well with an electric piano / synth, way more than it would, I feel like, on a piano, just because that melody line is so, like I said, like funky, right? And then you got kind of your ambient feeling going on around that, but it's cool. It's got that prog funk. You can hear that influence for sure.
Yeah.
Finally, there's an excerpt from episode 23 where Harrison Bieth talks about the song he contributed to the compilation, which is called The Silver Clouds. Just like the others, you can find this episode in the show notes if you want to hear more. Why don't you talk about the lyrics first for this one? Let's start there.
Again, like with Mass Crusader, I didn't really have a real spark of inspiration in terms of lyrics, but now hearing it back, I guess the idea that I had behind the lyrics is when you're at a point creatively where you don't know what you're working on, you don't know how to reach that goal, and you're questioning if there's a silver lining in trying to find what you're looking for and missing the mark. And also the interplay of self-doubt comes into play with everything. And you feel like you're kind of suffocating in a way. So I guess that's where the lyrical content came from, or one way you can look at it. I feel like this is one of those that's kind of up for interpretation because, again, my lyric writing is definitely better, but the meaning behind the lyrics I kind of left it more open ended with this, which is nice. I didn't really have any thematics that I was themes that I was looking for with this project, but like now, like again, what I just said before, I feel like fits the mold of what the song is generally about.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I don't even have that many notes for this song, which is funny when I opened the file. I think it's interesting because this song is such a vibe too, and I think it's at very much actually the high point of this EP. And like if you were playing it live, I feel like this would be the song that I would think about that performance, right? Like if I'm picturing it live. And I wonder too, like it could be the way the drums are produced that I think that, right? Because they're booming on it. But I just, who I could picture covering this song
Oh,
is Vampire Weekend. I like that little riff in the back, and I just picture them just rocking out
I
to it.
love that. I love that image. It's
Yeah,
funny you
right?
should say that about it being the highlight because I knew when I wrote the song, I was very happy and contented with how it sounded.
the moment I started tracking it and putting everything together, you know how I mentioned on Splash on Splash when I was talking about that record, how Fatal Knockout came together like lightning in a bottle, and I felt like I was always going to try and reach that because I knew instantly that that was going to be one of my favorite songs to listen back to. Silver Clouds is that on this record. This the moment I that we started piecing this song together in the little bits that we were coming up with, I was immediately in love with the song even more than I already was. Like I knew the song was a winner when I wrote it, which is very reassuring that I could write songs that I can make me very happy to listen back to, no matter how many times I play it, no matter how many times I listen to myself sing. I felt so confident with this song, and like it shows in the vocal performance. It shows with the level of growth, like the level of growth I have as a singer is one thing, and that's just from constantly doing it. But it's someone else actually said, one of my friends pointed out that like out of all the songs that this is like the best vocal performance I've had on record so far, and I agree. And it's funny because it's like it's a negative, like the lyrics are very negative, but it's like I sing it with such joy, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, I know, and that's what makes it cool. It's almost like that's why I mean it's like a vibe, you know. It almost reminds me of um it doesn't do this though. It doesn't go as far as like we all become silhouettes by the Postal Service, you know that song? It's like very happy, but the content is like very grim, right? But I don't get that here. I it's not this song is good. Like it's like you could kind of hear the darkness passing by, but at the same time it's not happy enough where it juxtaposes. It kind
Yeah.
of just lightens the mood.
Yes.
Um yeah, it's quite good. I can agree with that sentiment too. This is definitely one of your stronger vocals. Bar raiser.
Yeah. I
Um was this was the easiest track to record then?
Oh yeah, this was definitely the one that came together the easiest. It like vocally it didn't take me that many takes. Max didn't have to do too much as far as like fixing up the my vocal performance. Uh, and also what's funny is that day of recording, his brother-in-law is also the drummer of Lake Effect. Ryan was there interning for the day, and so he was also giving like creative input and like hearing the song back. And so having more than one person in the room for this song was really nice.
Yeah, yeah. I could see that.
And so like I think like having another person who I love and respect also in the room, I think made the recording process for the song that much more effective and easier.
Hmm. That concludes this episode of the Rich Soni podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and also explore the show notes. There's tons of links to really cool stuff down there. And until next time, be well.